Hey guys, welcome to this radio video, and this is a quick video about the propagation conditions for the next few days. I decided to probably do this weekly feature where I'll talk about propagation. Now we are Thursday, June 12th, and so I will post a video every Thursday about the propagation condition in the past week and what is to expect in the days to come. Of course, it's entirely based on two things. What I see in the numbers and on the different websites that I go to for propagation, and of course based on my experience and a little bit of you know extrapolation of my own ideas of propagation conditions. So there goes. We have, of course, many flares have been sent by the sun. So a lot of flares have been erupting on the sun in the past few days. We've had a total of 3 X flares actually on June 10th and 11th. So this is pretty cool for propagation because it means the sun is waking up a lot in the past few days. The area of interest is sunspot 2087, and that sunspot is actually a great source of flares. And you see here the group of sunspot 2087. The first flares were when the sunspot was just barely visible on the sun's limb here, but now it's getting more and more into what we call geo-effective position. So that means that as the sunspot's moving towards the center of the solar disk, there's increased risk that if there are X flares, that the Earth will be in the line of fire of the coronal mass ejections. So what that means also for propagation, well, the solar flux has been really bumping up because of that. So last week we had solar flux barely at 100, and now we are at 168. That's for June 12th at 12:05 UTC. 168. K index 1, that's marvelous for propagation. So as long as the K index stays quite low, that higher solar flux should give us a lot of nice propagation. The thing to check is the news of solar flares, because what happens is if sunspot 2087 or any other sunspot on the sun produces another flare at the time of the flare, a few minutes after the flare has erupted, what happens is often there is a kind of a blackout, a small blackout of HF propagation. So if you're listening to your favorite station on the HF bands, you are in daylight hours, and you notice that the signal fades out quite a lot. Well, why not go and check? There could have been a solar flare. One of the great places where the information is pretty much, almost instantly visible. There's spaceweather.com. They have usually in the minutes to half hour following a big flare, they will have an announcement on the page. But solarham.net is a great place for that. They have really up-to-date stuff here. They do say they have their updated information quite often many times a day if the sun is really having lots of activity. And so check that. Check for solar flare activity if you see that your signals fade out. We hope the K index will stay low. So propagation should be good today on June the 12th. And if you are in the evening, what's nice is that higher solar flux means that the higher frequencies will propagate quite well. So stations like, for example, here Radio New Zealand 15720 should actually come in quite well in the late evening here in North America. So of course we'll keep you up to date on that information. And so for the coming days, things are looking good. The only threat, the only thing that could happen in the coming days is there were these coronal mass ejections here on um, the sun. And the problem is that even though the flares were pretty much on the eastern limb, and you see here, this is the coronal mass ejections when we had the X flares. They seem to have sent some of these particles a little bit towards Earth, which means that this probably, this happened on the 10th, we're on the 12th. Um, Maybe later today or on the 13th, 14th, geomagnetic activity and the K index, of course, will probably rise because the Earth will have the geomagnetic field of Earth will actually react with this solar flare and these particles. So there could be some unsettled activity. I don't expect, from what I see here, to have big geomagnetic storms. But of course, you never know with the sun. But if this 2087 spot flares in the days to come, as it's getting closer and closer to the center of the disk, then we will have probably some geomagnetic storms possible, and of course auroras visible in the night sky. So take note of this propagation condition that should be quite good right now with a solar flux of 168. Higher frequencies should propagate well up to the 10-meter band with such a solar flux. Let's hope the sun keeps up its solar activity so that we have good propagation. We really saw last week and the past 2 weeks when the solar flare dropped to 100 and less. I even see 98, I believe, for one day. I really noticed that the higher frequencies were not propagating that well. So that was kind of a bummer here for radio listening. But now with higher solar activity. Little look here at the different flares, as you see here. Flares X2, X1, these are big flares. Everything that's in X is the biggest flares the sun can give out. And technically they go up to X30. But there is discussion as to maybe changing the scale because some of the flares would actually run off the scale that we had in the past. Like the last solar cycle, we had one that would have been technically an X30 or something like that, and would have been probably more than X30, but scale stopped there, so they just put X30. These are really big flares, but X flares are major flares, and M flares are pretty strong also. So not to take for granted that because we have an M flare, oh, it's not that great. M flares are very powerful. We have 3 categories of flares, in case you don't know: C, M, and X. C are small flares. M, medium-sized flares. They could be quite big. And then we have X, and X are the strongest of all. So that's why they're in red here on the list. So look at all these flares in the past few days. 3 X flares, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 M flares. That's a lot, including 3 today on June 12th at 0421, 0937, and 1021 Zulu. So I think these are quite nice. If you look at the charts here, you see that geomagnetic field and all that energy that comes from the sun making these little peaks. So try out your radios, and hopefully if the K index still stays quite low here, K1, 2, not much more, good propagation. And of course we have radio blackouts. This is what it says here: radio blackouts reaching R1 level. The radio blackouts typically occur when there's a flare. A few minutes after the flare, you have these little radio blackouts. But R1 is not very strong. It means that if you're listening to a strong station on shortwave in daytime, it won't really black out the station, but it's really gonna make the station much weaker on your radio dial. So if you see a station that you're hearing well getting weaker, probably a solar flare occurred. So for the next week until next Tuesday, well, we should have the solar flux should hover around 160, 170, maybe a little more if things continue. So we should have hopefully some good propagation, and in the nighttime hours, it should actually be quite good for stations that are higher in frequency, because the higher solar flux will help, and will also help for propagation from halfway around the world. So enjoy your propagation, enjoy your radio, and hope that you have these cool radio signals thanks to increased solar flux values. So thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this new segment that will be updated every Thursday. I'm planning to maybe have updates that could be, a little faster if there are really, really big events in solar and geomagnetic activity. So thanks for watching. Bye-bye.